Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 14 of the Micawber Telecaster build, and in this episode we're going to be breaking out the sandpaper, warming up the buffer and getting a shine onto this body. Now this body's been sat for 3 or 4 weeks now, and the weather's not been too cold, it's been quite warm, so it's cured quite nicely. There's a couple of things you can do to ascertain if it's ready or not. You can smell it, and if it still smells of kind of painty chemicals, it's not ready yet. But also you can just kind of give it a press with a fingernail, and if it doesn't leave an impression, you're good to go. I've done both of those things with this body and it is ready. So the first thing I've done is I've just taken some paste wax and I've rubbed it into all the little holes, and that's basically just to keep the moisture out. Potentially what could happen is the moisture gets in there and it causes the areas around the holes just to swell up, and we don't want that. So that will keep the worst of the moisture out. And next up, I've just prepared some little bits of wet and dry paper, and I'm going to go from 600 all the way through to 1200 on this. I'm not going to go any finer than 1200. I've got a bowl of warm soapy water, so this is hand soap, not dish soap. And I've got a bottle of clean cold water just for rinsing down. I've got my headphones so I can listen to some tunes because this is going to be a long job. I've got a brew. And what I'm going to do is I'll just soak a bit of paper for a few seconds in the water. Doesn't have to be for long. Some people like to soak their paper overnight. I'm happy for them to do that if they want to. I don't really see the point. It is worth noting that I'm using decent quality wet and dry paper here. For what it costs, you might as well buy the good stuff. The cheap stuff doesn't last as long and it doesn't give you as good a finish. Just a false economy in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to start with this bit of 600. And basically I'm going to start just sanding in small circles. And just wipe it off. Now there's two schools of thought with this process. The first one is sanding in circles like I've just done, and the other one is sanding in straight lines like this. And you do this for your first grit of paper, in this case 600. And then when you moved up to your next grit, which would be 800 in this case, you actually sand at 45 degrees. And the reason you do that is you'd be able to see, if you hadn't sanded it all out properly, because you'd still be able to see the scratches running in that direction through the scratches running in this direction. And then when you changed up to your next grit of paper, you'd change the angle again. Now I have used that method in the past and it does work. But I prefer to use the circular motion. It's just a more comfortable motion for me, and I'm going to be doing this for quite a long time. And what I'm trying to achieve here is to get all of these little marks and lines, some of which kind of are like an orange peely effect from where I sprayed it, and the rest of it is where, even though I grain filled it, the lacquer has sunk back into the grain of the wood a little bit. And all I'm trying to do is to get that down to a flat, even surface. So effectively I'm taking off the material at the top until I get down to the level of the stuff that's sunk in. Now that might sound quite drastic, but it's actually microns of material that I'm moving. It's a very, very small amount. So if I've put enough on, I shouldn't go through. And to demonstrate that further, I've done this little patch here in preparation for this. So you can see on the area that I haven't sanded, there's some little shiny spots, which is where we've still got low spots in the finish. but in most of this area now it's down to where we need it. That's done to 600. We will then from there use the finer grades of paper to polish that up to something closer to the finish that we want. Now you might be wondering why I'm using this small block to sand with. It's actually just an eraser and not something like this, which is my normal size sanding block. The simple reason is this will give you a less flat finish. It won't be a perfectly flat plane, but it will enable you to kind of focus on the areas where you need to remove more material and blend it all in nicely. Whereas this block would force you to make it a much flatter surface. Now that might sound like a good thing to do, but the problem is this is wood and it moves and it's inconsistent. So if you were to try and go for that perfectly flat, smooth finish that's like a pane of glass, A, it's not going to stay that way for long, and B, you massively increase your risk of burning through the lacquer as you reveal the high spots. So you could go through your paint job to the bare wood and then you're in a world of hurt. So the smaller one is great for getting into the little undulations and evening them all out. Once I've gone past probably 800 grit, I'm going to start doing it just by hand, just to kind of take that process to the next step. It will leave me with a finish that will polish to a high gloss, and you won't be able to tell that it's not absolutely perfectly flat. It will look every bit as good as it needs to. Okay, so that's all now rubbed down to 1200 grit. The 800 and the 1200 goes really fast because all you're really doing is kind of taking out the scratches from the paper before. So you've done all your kind of flattening and leveling work. You're just merely polishing stuff up now. And I think that's looking really good. Feels nice and smooth. So I'm just going to crack on now with the top and get the polisher on it. Okay, so to polish this up, I'm going to be using some of this compound, Farecla G3. It's a water-based compound, and the thing I love about this is it's designed to break down with use. So the abrasive particles in this break down into a finer and finer grit with the application of friction and moisture. So I'm going to apply the friction with this polisher, and this is where the clean water comes in. So I'm simply going to spray the body down with clean water, put a little bit of the polish on, spread it out. Now I've just been and cleaned this pad out, and I've got most of the moisture out, but it is still damp. And I've got it set relatively slow, and we're just going to start working our way around the body, polishing it up. So I'll bring you in for some closer shots of that in a second, but you can kind of see it's taken on a shine. I need to go over it again. I wasn't applying any pressure at all there, I was just letting the mop do its work, and that's brought it up lovely. And you can see there by the reflections of the light that has come up beautifully. Well, that's always something of a special moment for me. First time you see that gloss shining through when you rub the compound off. If you enjoyed that as much as I did, don't forget to give the video a like. Okay, so with the front done, it's time to get some fresh water, a new brew, and crack on with the back. Okay, so that's the back done. As you can see, it's really glossy and shiny, so I'm really happy with that. So all that leaves is kind of all around the edges. Now there's not actually that much surface area on these, so it doesn't take very long at all to get down to a finish that you need. So I'm just going to do these by hand. I'm not going to use a block, I'll just use my fingers. And then once I'm happy with the sanding, I will then just polish them by hand with a bit of compound on a cloth. I won't use the power mop on the sides because there's just a massively increased risk of burning through. Okay, and there we have the finished body. It needs a lot of cleaning up. There's a lot of compound and bits from the polishing mop, etc. in all the cavities, but that won't take too long to do. And generally, I'm really happy with that. It's got what I would describe as a really nice vintage gloss. So it's very shiny, but it's not the kind of plasticky shine that you'd get on a modern kind of polyester finished guitar. So I'm just going to continue cleaning this up, then we can get it out of the way, get the neck back on the bench and start to get that somewhere near complete. But I'm going to leave that for the next episode. So while you're all busy liking and subscribing and telling your friends about the Shed of Dreams, I'll get my hoodie into the wash and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.